This video is in the series Foster Child Advocacy, and the topic of this video is identity formation. I read somewhere that individualization happens naturally around age 7. So what does this mean to a child that has experienced trauma in their developmental years? What that meant in my life was I knew my name and I knew my mother's name. Don't even know if I knew her full name. I lived with my mother and birth father. They divorced when I was a toddler. Went on to living with her and the first stepfather, like from 3 to 5 years old. I was also in foster care during that time. I'm not sure where, how many homes. And then was put back to live with my mother and second stepfather during the ages of 5 to 10. And I didn't know my birth father's name. I knew my second stepfather's name, and of course my siblings, my brother and sister, I knew their names. I also knew my mother's brother and his wife, and they had 3 children. So in the time when I was living with my birth mother and family, I was able to know relatives like my grandparents and cousins and an uncle and aunt. But then put into foster care permanently at 10. I never saw any of them again. So identity formation, how did that affect me, Tina Marie Thurston? How would that affect a child who's put into a system and now you're just a foster child in a system? That's what you're known as. When I moved to the last foster home I lived through junior high and high school years, you know, I didn't know anybody there, and I had kids come up to me. I don't know how they found out, and not a lot, just a couple, you know, come up and go, "Hey, I heard you're a foster kid, you know, what'd you do?" And I just remember thinking, how do people know this and why do they care? But, you know, my identity, I didn't even have the ability to say like, well, actually, you know, I like this and I like that, and there's a lot more to me than just being a foster kid. Like, I had no sense of security within myself yet. And so I felt like this is a really important topic to bring up, to bring awareness to. With the internet, I'm sure that, you know, it's a lot easier to find people and to, you know, identify your heritage and such. This wasn't available when I was growing up. So there might be, you know, differences now as to what I'll be speaking about of my own experience versus what's available now on the internet. And first and foremost, the child's safety is always most important. So as I speak about some things, it's like, for instance, my birth certificate. I didn't ever see a copy of my birth certificate until it was time for me to learn driver's education in high school, so 16 years old. And now I see my birth certificate, and now I see my father's full name and my mother's full name and the hospital where I was born, what time I was born. I didn't know any of this information. So things that you might take for granted of growing up with parents or even grandparents or an aunt and uncle, somebody that knows your family history, where you were born, where you lived, you know, as a child. I didn't have these things. It was just a feeling of being shuffled around, like you're just go over here now you're going to go over there, now you live here, now these are your parents, now that, you know, it's like it's a constant unsettled, you know, feeling inside. You're constantly wondering, how long am I going to stay here, or what's going to happen next? It's that survival mode that I talk so much about, and it's something that I think if you haven't lived it, you can read about it, you can know somebody who's lived it, but unless you've truly lived that daily experience of, I don't know what I'm going to wake up to. I don't know what I'm going to go to bed to. I don't know. It goes beyond just the mysteries of life that we don't know. It's a deeply ingrained fear of life and that survival mode. So identity formation, help a child establish their identity beyond being a foster child. You know, recognize or try to encourage, you know, talents that you might think they can explore. If they, you know, singing, if they wander around the house and you know, sing to themselves or something. Oh, do you like singing? And encourage that. Or sports, or, you know, if they're an avid reader, it's like just encourage the things that you see within them so that they can have a sense of themselves that goes beyond this label of you're a foster kid, which when I was growing up automatically meant I did something bad, you know? So it's, again, there's more awareness now, but these things probably still exist, you know, for some in the system. A child of abuse is focused on survival. I can't emphasize that enough. You can watch other children playing, you can play at times, but there's always in the back of your mind, what am I going to go home to? Am I going to go home to a home today? You know, it's a survival that I just can't even fully describe. It's a constant awareness of unsettledness, of fear. And so, you know, you don't really have the luxury that children have of waking up and that wonderment and that, like, I'm going to go play, I'm going to go do this. It's like, it's a constant, what is going to happen? You know, the chaos, the abuse, the violence, it's just so much more to think about than just being able to be a child. As far as family positions, when you don't have a solid sense of yourself and some sort of understanding where you fit into a family, it's incredibly isolating. And, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you've got aunts, cousins, grandparents. When you have this kind of structure around you that you know your mom and dad are going to be there when you wake up. You know, they're going to be there to kiss you goodnight. You know that your brother and sister are going to be there. There's a sense of stability and security that comes with that is just unsaid. It's like a knowing within versus a survival of always wondering, you know, who's going to be around and for how long. I'll tell you a story of when I was about 14 and just how important and how for granted people assume that everybody has this in their lives. Family. So my last foster home I lived, they were Mormon, and to be in the home I had to be baptized in the Mormon church and attend church, which had its benefits at the time. But I was in a church class and there was a guest speaker that came in to just the teenage girls age group that I was in, and she handed out some pamphlet things that were like a family tree to fill in. And so, you know, she talked about genealogy and family and then handed these workbooks out, and I wrote down my name and I wrote down, I think, my mother's name and my grandmother's names, and that's all I knew. And everyone else in class is just busy writing away, and you know, I didn't know anything else. And she looked at me and she was like, you know, why aren't you doing the assignment? Why aren't you writing anything down? I was like, I don't know. And she's like, what do you mean you don't know? I just thought, I don't know. And she thought I was being like defiant. And then she started challenging me, like, well, what do you mean you don't know? Who doesn't know their family? How could you not know? And I'm just sitting there. And as she's rattling off, tears well up in my eyes. And I left the classroom and went to the bathroom and of course was crying because I didn't at that time have therapy. I was about 14. I didn't have therapy to deal with the years, the constant abuse from you know, 2 stepfathers, and constant from 5 to 10 years old. As I've said in previous videos, I was so close to being trafficked by him, and everything that had gone on from the abuse of my stepfathers and mother, I didn't have therapy, you know, so I'm just like holding all this stuff in, trying to just be normal, go to school, go to church, you know, do the activities that everyone else is doing. But those kind of things hit, you know, when they hit, they hit. And to be challenged, what do you mean you don't know? How could you not know? It's like, whew, you know. Thankfully, I had a Sunday school teacher who was the regular Sunday school teacher, and she knew my situation, and she came to me in the bathroom and had compassion and apologized for the ignorance of that person, and hugged me. And just having that bit of care and understanding was so important. So yeah, help a child form their own identity beyond being a ward of the court, a kid in the system, kid in foster care, kid in group home, kid in a facility, whatever that is, troubled child, whatever it is. There's more in that child than the trouble, than the abuse. Help them bring that out. It's the best gift you could give them. Medical intake forms. Anytime I had to fill in something to do with school, to play sports or anything, I didn't know this information. I had no idea. So those, you know, moments in life, even going into adulthood, they were still impactful when I had children. It was like, you know, list your family's, you know, health conditions and such. And I knew some information, but I just didn't know. And I can't describe to you how, you know, where it seems like people just can easily fill this stuff in. And when you're sitting there, because you're reminded again that you don't know. You don't know. You're different. You know, you don't have this information. It's incredibly isolating, this way of growing up. And without having, you know, the security, the stability, the community and belonging that a family structure provides. And so it's, you know, it's all I can do is like share my stories, and if they make an impact, to be able to assist a child into, you know, hey, look, you know, what are you interested in? What information can we find out, you know, for you that might help that child as they're growing up, you know, having to fill in intake forms. What is your heritage? I didn't even know where I came from, my heritage, until within the last like 10 years. I paid to do Ancestry. You know, I didn't even know, you know, where I came from. And so many times I'd heard in my life, oh, you have such exotic features or something. Where are you from? And I'm like, I don't know. So thank goodness now for the internet, you have the possibility to research and look things up and find, you know, answers. On the other hand, you know, safety of the child is always most important. When I was put into foster care permanently, and the court system felt that removal of everyone I knew, cousins, grandparents, was what had to happen. I never saw them again, and that was really hard to have once known these people. And in fact, my great-grandmother, who I did spend some time with as a young girl and did have good memories of, once I was put in the system permanently, I never saw her again, came home one day to mail from the Contra Costa County Social Services, and it was my great-grandmother's death announcement and burial and all that information. So I didn't even get to go to her funeral. I didn't know about any of this until after the fact. So imagine the damage that instilled. You know, again, I understand that if for safety reasons, you know, a child is to be removed from all that they knew, everyone they knew, but I can say that having gone through CASA training a few years back, reunification is something that is emphasized now that was not emphasized when I was in the system. It was more about removal, protect, separate from everybody, and that was just so damaging. So yeah, as best as you can, to whatever structure is in your family, whether it's foster home, permanent home, help that child understand where their place is within the family system. How does that child fit in to this group, to this home? It's so important for a child to feel like they belong and that they're wanted and they belong there, and they have value to that family, they have value to the community. When you grow up, as I did, it's incredibly isolating and you don't feel like you have value. You don't feel like you're worth anything except for the place that these people tried to put you in. It's taken a long time to form who I am, my likes, my dislikes, be able to state them with clarity and know that it's okay to have my boundaries, to not associate with some people, to welcome others. These are all things that are generally taught in an aware household. But if you can help these children, have these elements of their life as early as possible, that stability is so, so important. I think that's about all the notes I have here on this topic of identity formation. Just help them know when they're asking questions, if you're able to, get family names, get heritage, where they're from. If there's any medical history that can be gained from their birth parents, their situation before that was placed into ward of the court, just any information that you can give to help that human go out into the world and have that information available to them, so that it's not so isolating, and so you're not just constantly reminded of how little you know of your own self. It's so important just to say, I do see all comments. I still read all the comments. I appreciate those of you who genuinely are interested in helping these kids, helping children grow up in a safe, secure place. I have gratitude for you. So thank you for those kind of comments. I appreciate them very much. And again, when I make these videos, all I can do is speak from my own experience and what may have been helpful to me, and hopefully in all this time, like I said, reunification is important now where it wasn't when I was in the system. So yeah, there's been some changes made that are positive, but there's so much more to go. There's over 400,000 children in the United States in foster care. So imagine the generation of children that is going out into the world, and as much information as you can give them, as much sense of identity as you can bestow upon them, as much good as you can recognize in them and help cultivate that. It just means it's a better human that's going to be out there as an adult. So until next time, thanks for watching.